In the span of exactly 24 hours, an artificial intelligence proved 10 mathematical theorems that human geniuses basically couldn't solve for decades.
Which is just, I mean, it's wild to even think about.
Right. And simultaneously, on the exact same day, Wall Street decided that a single software company was worth the entire gross domestic product of Canada.
Yeah, the timing of those two things happening together is just, it's unprecedented.
It really is. So today, for you listening, we are connecting those two completely impossible realities. We're pulling apart a single explosive window in the AI industry, which is August 14th and 15th, 2026.
And I think it's a profound sequence of events to look at sequentially, because when you isolate this specific 24-hour news cycle, you kind of stop seeing isolated company announcements.
Right, it stops being just PR.
Exactly. You start seeing this massive, highly coordinated global supply chain just snapping into place.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive today. So we've got a highly curated stack of news briefs from this exact window. We're looking at unprecedented financial movements from OpenAI and Anthropic, staggering international infrastructure deals.
The physical stuff. Yeah.
Right, the physical data centers, and technological breakthroughs that are literally rewriting computer science.
Yeah.
But, we aren't just going to read you the news.
No.
No.
That would be boring.
Yeah, exactly. The central theme we're exploring today is the immense physical business impact behind this upcoming wave of AI initial public offerings, because it's huge.
It's massive. The capital markets are about to experience an influx of liquidity that we really haven't seen in modern economic history.
But the crazy part is that capital isn't just staying on Wall Street, right?
Not at all. It's immediately being mobilized into concrete, into steel, silicon, specialized software. It's hitting the real world immediately.
Yeah, because reading the headlines from this single day, it's kind of like watching a rocket launch. You see the fire, you hear the noise, which in this case is the IPOs and the multi-trillion-dollar valuations. But today we are tearing apart the blueprints.
We're looking at the launch pad.
Exactly. We're mapping the massive unseen machinery and the fuel lines making it possible. So we really need to start with the financial groundwork, because before a company can go public, they have to stabilize their cap table.
They have to clean up the messy venture capital stuff.
Right. And our sources point us directly to this fascinating maneuver by OpenAI. So the brief states they have just been valued at $852 billion in a new employee liquidity round.
And the detail that immediately jumps off the page there is that this valuation is entirely flat.
Flat? Wait, really?
Yeah, it exactly matches their previous funding round level from way back in March.
Which is, that's incredibly counterintuitive, right? I look at this and my immediate reaction is just total confusion.
Because of the normal Silicon Valley playbook?
Exactly. The entire narrative of tech venture capital is this absolute obsession with the up round. You want the graph to look like a hockey stick.
You want to show hypergrowth.
Right. Yeah. And between March and August of 2026, the AI industry has moved at light speed. Models have become exponentially more capable. Adoption has skyrocketed.
It's been a blur, honestly.
So if the tech is moving that fast, why wouldn't OpenAI's internal valuation reflect that growth? I really have to wonder if they are intentionally sandbagging here.
Sandbagging how?
Like, are they artificially freezing their value at $852 billion? So that when they finally do launch the IPO, the stock looks like a total bargain to retail investors and immediately pops on day one.
Okay, I see what you're saying, but I would actually push back on the idea of sandbagging.
Oh, really? Why?
Because that implies a level of market manipulation that institutional investors, the big guys, would see right through instantly. What we're looking at here is actually a profound shift in corporate psychology.
Okay, walk me through that.
So they are transitioning from this private, venture-backed growth engine into a mature public financial institution. In the private markets, sure, the up round is everything.
Right, it signals momentum to your competitors, keeps your employees hyped.
Exactly. But the public markets, like the sovereign wealth funds, the pension managers, the institutional indexers, they despise volatility. They hate it.
So they don't want a roller coaster. They want predictability.
They want to know the foundation is absolutely solid before they park, $100 billion of their clients' retirement funds into your stock.
That makes sense. So if OpenAI had pushed this liquidity round to, say, $950 billion or pushed over the trillion-dollar mark just to get a flashy headline?
They would be setting an incredibly aggressive, almost impossible benchmark for their eventual IPO.
And missing that benchmark is a disaster.
It's the absolute worst-case scenario. For a tech company transitioning to the public markets, the dreaded down-round IPO where you go public at a lower valuation than your last private one is a death knell.
Because it instantly triggers this narrative of a bursting bubble, right? It tells the market that your best days were actually 6 months ago when private investors were just overly euphoric.
It destroys employee morale. It enrages those early investors who are still locked up and can't sell. And frankly, it invites massive regulatory scrutiny.
So by explicitly holding the valuation steady at $852 billion, OpenAI is establishing this concrete, undeniable baseline of financial stability.
Yes, they're sending a very clear, very adult message to Wall Street saying, look, we are not artificially inflating our worth based on August's hype cycle. We are a mature financial entity.
It's kind of like pouring an incredibly deep, thick concrete slab before you try to build a 100-story skyscraper. You don't brag about the height of the building while you're still digging the dirt.
You just make sure the foundation is uncrackable. That's a great way to put it.
But let's look at the actual mechanics of this employee liquidity round for a second, because the business impact here for the people involved is fascinating. $852 billion is practically incomprehensible.
Yeah, it's massive.
Right, it makes them one of the most valuable entities on Earth. But until they actually IPO, that wealth is largely theoretical for the people who actually built the company, isn't it?
That is the core tension of the modern tech sector right there. You have these engineers, researchers, and early executives who hold equity packages that make them centimillionaire on paper.
But paper wealth does not pay the mortgage.
No, it doesn't. And it doesn't diversify your personal portfolio either. If you have, 99% of your net worth tied up in highly illiquid private shares of OpenAI, you are carrying massive personal financial risk.
So this liquidity round acts as a pressure release valve. The company is basically allowing existing shareholders, the early employees, to sell a portion of their vested equity to outside institutional investors.
Exactly.
And just to clarify for you listening, OpenAI doesn't actually take any new cash onto its balance sheet in this specific transaction, right?
Correct. It is strictly a secondary market transaction. The money goes from the buyer straight to the employee.
Wow. Okay, so it's just a transfer of shares to eager external buyers.
No. And strategically, it is brilliant for retention because in a hyper-competitive talent market, if OpenAI doesn't let its key engineers cash out some of their winnings, a competitor will just swoop in.
They'll offer them massive liquid cash signing bonuses to jump ship.
Right. So this flat $852 billion round keeps the talent happy, it clears out early investors who want an exit, and it solidifies that baseline valuation.
But the macroeconomic implication of this is what really just staggers me. Think about what happens when this company actually transitions this $852 billion private valuation into the public stock exchange.
It's going to be an earthquake.
We are talking about injecting nearly $1 trillion of new market capitalization into the S&P 500. So for the everyday retail investor listening right now, or just anyone with a standard 401k, how does an entry of that sheer magnitude alter the gravity of the market?
It creates a violent, forced rebalancing of global assets.
Okay, unpack that. Forced how?
Let's look at the mechanics of a market cap-weighted index fund, which is what most everyday investors hold in their retirement accounts.
Right, like an S&P 500 tracker.
Exactly. If a company goes public and suddenly represents a massive percentage of the entire market's value, every passive index fund on the planet is mathematically forced to buy that stock.
Oh, wow, they don't even have a choice.
No choice at all. The algorithm that runs the fund dictates that if OpenAI is now, say, 2% of the total market, the fund must immediately hold 2% of its assets in OpenAI.
But wait, where does that cash come from? Because passive funds don't just have hundreds of billions of dollars sitting in cash waiting for an IPO, right?
Exactly. To buy OpenAI, they have to sell other things. They have to trim their positions in legacy manufacturing, consumer staples, healthcare, and even legacy tech companies.
That's a vacuum effect.
It is a massive vacuum effect.
So an IPO of this size doesn't just magically create new wealth out of thin air. It fundamentally reallocates the existing wealth of the global economy directly toward artificial intelligence.
It is a gravitational black hole. And the wild part is that is just OpenAI, acting as the mature, stabilizing force in this scenario.
Right, because they're the ones playing it safe with the flat valuation.
The contrast in our sources is what makes this 24-hour window so historic. Because while OpenAI is carefully managing expectations, their primary rival is leaning into maximum market euphoria.
Yes. Let's pivot to the Anthropic brief, because this is where the numbers stop making any kind of logical sense and start entering the realm of macroeconomics.
The Anthropic numbers are just, they're mind-bending.
Truly. So our sources are tracking massive investor buzz surrounding an Anthropic IPO. The timeline being aggressively pushed is an October launch,
Yeah.
and the valuation being floated by institutional investors is crossing the $2 trillion mark.
$2 trillion.
Yeah.
It is a number that is thrown around so casually in tech media now that we have completely lost perspective on what it actually represents.
I genuinely struggled to wrap my head around it while I was reviewing the briefs for today. Like, $2 trillion is not a corporate valuation.
No, it's not.
It is the GDP of Italy. It is the entire economic output of Canada. We are talking about private capital markets assigning the value of a G7 nation to a single software company headquartered in San Francisco.
It's staggering, and they are anticipating doing this in October. The timeline is arguably more aggressive than the valuation itself.
Let's talk about that timeline, because that stuck out to me too.
Yeah.
Our sources are from mid-August. If they're targeting an October IPO, that is a matter of weeks.
It's an absolute sprint.
But I've always understood going public to be this grueling, year-long slog. You know, you have all the S-1 filings with the SEC, you have exhaustive forensic accounting audits, endless roadshows where executives have to basically beg institutional asset managers for capital.
Just a traditional route, yes.
So how do you compress the transition from a private startup to a heavily regulated $2 trillion publicly traded megalith into 60 days?
You can only do it if the institutional demand is so overwhelming that the traditional roadshow becomes a mere formality.
Like, they don't even have to sell it.
Exactly. In a standard IPO, you are convincing the market to buy. In a hype cycle IPO of this magnitude, you aren't convincing anyone. You are merely deciding which institutions you will actually allow to buy in.
Wow. So Anthropic is operating under the assumption that the capital is already secured, just waiting at the gates with bags of cash.
Pretty much.
But why the intense rush? I mean, if the fundamentals are truly there to support a $2 trillion valuation, why not just wait until Q1 of 2027? Why sprint to October?
Because market liquidity and investor sentiment are fleeting. They can change overnight.
Sure.
If you are the executive team at Anthropic, you are looking at the macroeconomic landscape. You're looking at interest rates. You're looking at geopolitical stability. And you're looking at the current fever pitch obsession with AI.
And they realize the window might close.
They recognize that they have a historically unprecedented window right now where investors are essentially price insensitive.
Price insensitive, meaning they don't even care what the cost per share is.
Exactly. They are so terrified of missing out on the foundational layer of the next industrial revolution that they will pay whatever multiple you ask.
So you don't wait for the SEC to leisurely review your filings over 6 months. You push an army of corporate lawyers to work 100-hour weeks to get it done while the window's wide open.
Spot on. But I want to circle back to your point about the gravitational black hole. Because if OpenAI at $852 billion forces a reallocation, Anthropic at $2 trillion fundamentally drains the liquidity pool of the entire tech sector.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask about.
Yeah.
There's a finite amount of liquid capital available for investment at any given second.
Right, yeah.
So if institutional asset managers commit over $2 trillion in market cap to Anthropic, does that completely suffocate the rest of the tech ecosystem?
It absolutely chokes it.
Like, does the mid-tier cloud computing startup or the consumer software company suddenly find that no one is returning their calls because all the capital has been absorbed by the AI megaliths?
Historically, yes. That is what economists call the crowding out effect.
The crowding out effect.
Okay. When a generational asset goes public, portfolio managers have to concentrate their bets. They simply cannot afford to be underweight on a company that might dictate the future of global productivity.
So they consolidate.
Right. They sell off their risky, speculative mid-cap stocks to fund their massive Anthropic allocation.
Wait, I want to challenge that slightly. Isn't there an argument for the rising tide lifting all boats?
How so?
Well, if Anthropic proves that a software company can actually be worth $2 trillion, doesn't that inherently expand the multiples for the entire sector? Like, an investor might look at a smaller AI infrastructure company and say, well, if the ceiling is $2 trillion, maybe this little company isn't worth $5 billion, maybe it's worth $20 billion.
It does raise the multiple, but, and this is a huge but only for companies that are directly within the blast radius of the AI ecosystem.
Oh, I see.
The rising tide lifts the AI supply chain, sure, but it actively drains the capital from unrelated sectors.
So if you're not doing AI, you're sunk.
Essentially, a traditional enterprise software company that hasn't integrated a compelling AI narrative will find it nearly impossible to raise capital at a favorable multiple in the shadow of this IPO.
Because the market is demanding exposure to the intelligence layer, and they're more than willing to liquidate their legacy holdings to get it.
Exactly.
But let's pause here because this massive reallocation of global wealth, this willingness to just dump legacy tech and pour trillions into OpenAI and Anthropic, it requires an absolute unshakable belief that the underlying technology actually works. Right?
You'd hope so, yeah.
Right. Institutional investors managing sovereign wealth don't shell out the GDP of Canada just because a company has a slick pitch deck and a charismatic CEO.
Right.
They require proof of unprecedented capability.
Which brings us directly to the technological breakthroughs that occurred in this exact same 24-hour window. The financial maneuvering is really merely a reflection of the product capabilities being released.
And the release cadence documented in our sources is blistering. The pace of commercialization is almost hard to track for a normal person.
Yeah, it's relentless.
We have Google shipping Gemini 3.7 Flash on August 13th that is immediately flanked by recent launches of Grok 4.6 and Seed 2.1 Turbo.
I want you to notice the naming conventions across the entire industry right now. Flash, Turbo.
Right. It feels like we are buying graphics cards in the 1990s or, like, sports cars, not enterprise intelligence systems.
It's very aggressive branding.
But there is a very specific business strategy behind those names, isn't there?
Yes, it signals a profound pivot in the business model of AI.
How so?
Well, for the first few years of the generative AI boom, the competition was purely about parameter count and raw capability. Who could build the most massive, all-knowing model, regardless of the cost.
Just raw brute force intelligence.
Exactly. But you cannot sustain a multi-trillion-dollar market cap on a product that loses money every single time a user queries it.
Right, because the compute costs of running those massive models for everyday tasks would bankrupt them. You don't need a supercomputer to write a marketing email or summarize a PDF for a meeting.
Exactly. So the shift to these Flash and Turbo models represents the aggressive commoditization of intelligence.
Commoditization, meaning making it cheap and ubiquitous.
Right. These companies have figured out how to distill the reasoning capabilities of their massive models into exponentially smaller, faster, and cheaper architectures.
So they're optimized.
Heavily optimized. These models are designed for brutal efficiency. They cost fractions of a cent to run, meaning they can be integrated into millions of everyday enterprise workflows profitably.
They're finally proving to Wall Street that AI isn't just an expensive research project. It is a highly scalable, high-margin software business.
Which is what Wall Street wants to hear.
The Flash models pay the bills and justify the immediate revenue multiples. But they don't justify a $2 trillion valuation on their own, do they?
Not even close.
Right. Reliable enterprise software is great, but it doesn't change the course of human history. Which leads us to the absolute showstopper in our sources.
The OpenAI Astra announcement.
Yes. Amidst all this talk of cheap, efficient Flash models, OpenAI drops a bombshell. They announced that their internal model, codenamed Astra, has solved 10 previously unsolved mathematical and theoretical computer science problems.
Just casually solving 10 unsolved problems.
Right. And they didn't just issue a press release boasting about it. They published formally verified proofs on GitHub for the whole world to see.
This is the paradigm shift that Wall Street is actually pricing in right now. This is the ultimate justification for the trillions.
I really needed us to dissect this because the phrase formally verified proofs on GitHub sounds incredibly dry and academic.
It does sound like a college lecture.
But my instinct is that this is the most important sentence in the entire stack of courses for today. Because up until this moment, the narrative around AI has basically been about aggregation.
Scraping data.
Exactly. These models scraped the internet, they digested all of human history, and they became incredibly proficient at predicting the next logical word based on what humans had already written.
They were brilliant mimics. They synthesized existing human knowledge, but they didn't invent anything.
But if Astra is solving genuinely unsolved mathematical problems, it is no longer mimicking. It can't scrape the answer from the internet because the answer didn't exist until Astra generated it.
It is fundamentally creating net new human knowledge.
Just mind-blowing.
It is the threshold between basic generative AI and early artificial general intelligence.
But you highlighted the critical mechanism earlier, the formally verified proofs. To understand the business impact, we have to look at the biggest historical barrier to enterprise AI adoption, which has been the hallucination problem, right?
Oh, absolutely. The hallucination problem has been the ceiling for the whole industry.
Just the fact that these models, because they are essentially just incredibly complex statistical probability engines, will occasionally just confidently lie to you.
And in high-stakes environments, probability is just not good enough. If you are using an AI to draft a creative brief, a hallucination is a funny quirk. You laugh it off. But if you are a major pharmaceutical company using an AI to simulate protein folding for a new cancer drug.
Or if you're a tier 1 investment bank using an AI to manage a high-frequency trading algorithm.
Exactly. In those cases, a hallucination is catastrophic. You cannot deploy a probabilistic system into a deterministic workflow. It has to be absolutely, undeniably correct every single time.
Which is where formal verification comes in.
Yes. A formal proof in computer science and mathematics is not a guess. It is a mathematical guarantee.
So it's not just the AI saying, trust me, I'm pretty sure this is the answer.
Not at all. It is checked step by step by highly specialized, rigid software, often called a proof assistant, that confirms the logic is objectively true. There is zero probability involved. It is binary. It is either a mathematical truth or it simply fails to compile.
So by publishing these formally verified proofs for unsolved problems on GitHub, which is the world's largest open source platform where every cryptographer and computer scientist on Earth can examine the code, OpenAI is really throwing down the gauntlet.
They are flexing hard.
They are publicly proving that Astra has evolved past statistical guessing. It has achieved rigorous deterministic reasoning.
They have essentially solved the hallucination problem at the highest level of abstraction.
And the business impact of that is staggering, because once an AI can reason deterministically, you can trust it with mission-critical enterprise systems.
The total addressable market for the technology explodes. It expands from creative assistance to running the core infrastructure of the global economy.
I have to ask about the specific nature of what they solved, though. The brief mentions theoretical computer science problems.
Right.
I'm looking at this from the perspective of an investor. Why does Wall Street care if an AI solves an obscure math problem on a whiteboard? How does that actually translate into a $2 trillion valuation?
That's the $1 million or $1 trillion question, because theoretical computer science is actually the study of computational efficiency.
Oh, okay.
Many of these unsolved problems relate directly to optimization, like how to route data through a network using the absolute minimum amount of bandwidth, how to structure an algorithm so it uses less memory.
How to compress complex information without losing fidelity.
Exactly.
Oh, wait. If Astra is solving fundamental optimization problems in computer science,
then those mathematical solutions can be directly applied to the architecture of the AI models themselves.
it's an intelligence feedback loop.
Bingo.
Astra is literally inventing new math that allows OpenAI to rewrite the underlying software of Astra to make it vastly more efficient.
Yes. And since compute cost is the single largest expense dragging down the margins of these AI companies, Astra isn't just generating academic papers, it is actively generating its own future profit margins.
It is the holy grail of software engineering, self-improving efficiency.
If an AI can optimize its own computational architecture, the financial upside is theoretically uncapped.
An investor looks at that dynamic and realizes that a $2 trillion price tag might actually be a massive discount because the company possesses a product that fundamentally lowers its own cost of goods sold with every single iteration.
It's a money printing machine that figures out how to use less ink over time.
That's staggering.
Yeah.
We're pricing in the assumption that these models are essentially digital Einsteins that will continually invent cheaper ways to operate themselves.
That's the bet Wall Street is making.
But here is the massive reality check, and this transitions us perfectly into the physical world. These digital Einsteins do not live in the theoretical ether.
Nope.
They don't live in mathematical space. And despite the tech industry's best marketing efforts, they do not live in a magical cloud.
No, the cloud is just someone else's extremely expensive, highly air-conditioned computer.
Exactly. These models live in massive, windowless, brutally power-hungry physical buildings.
Yeah.
And if you want to know where the hundreds of billions of dollars raised in these upcoming IPOs are actually going to be spent, you have to follow the concrete trucks.
You really do.
The financial maneuvering and the mathematical proofs are entirely dependent on the physical infrastructure layer.
because the infrastructure layer is where the abstraction of AI slams face first into the physical limits of the real world.
And our sources provide a massive real-world example of this physical build-out from this exact same 24-hour window. So Larsen & Toubro, the massive Indian multinational infrastructure conglomerate, has won an order worth roughly 15,000 crore rupees to build an NVIDIA-powered AI data center.
That's a huge deal.
And the detail that reveals the global supply chain at work here is that this order comes from a US-based cloud platform called Together AI.
We really have to unpack the scale of this because 15,000 crore translates to roughly 1.8 billion US dollars
Wow.
for a single physical facility.
A $1.8 billion building. Most major city skyscrapers don't cost $1.8 billion.
Not even close.
So what does that kind of capital actually buy you when constructing an AI data center? Because it's clearly not just a warehouse full of server racks and a few industrial fans.
No, it is an industrial scale reality that is closer to building a power plant than a traditional office building.
A power plant. Okay.
The sheer energy density required to run modern AI models is completely unprecedented in the history of computing. A massive portion of that $1.8 billion goes directly into securing electrical grid capacity.
Just getting the right to use the power.
Right. We are talking about facilities that require hundreds of megawatts of continuous power. They have to build dedicated high-voltage electrical substations just to step down the power from the regional grid.
Because the chips driving these models, specifically the NVIDIA GPUs mentioned in the brief, consume vast amounts of electricity, and they convert almost all of that electricity directly into heat, don't they?
That is the ultimate physical bottleneck. The heat generation is so extreme that traditional air conditioning systems in data centers are completely obsolete.
You can't just blow cold air on them anymore.
No, the ships would literally melt. So a significant chunk of that 1.8 billion is going into advanced liquid cooling architectures.
Liquid cooling. So like pipes running through the servers.
Exactly. They are plumbing massive closed-loop water systems directly to the server racks. Sometimes they're even submerging the hardware entirely in specialized dielectric fluids.
Oh, wow. Just dipping the computers in liquid.
Yeah. You need industrial chillers, massive water rights, and miles of advanced fiber optic cabling just to connect the compute nodes together so they can talk.
So it's not really a data center. It's a hyper-dense thermodynamics management facility.
That's a very accurate way to describe it.
The raw material going in is electricity and chilled water, and the final manufactured product coming out is mathematical computation. But I really want to look at the business strategy of Together AI here. So they are a US-based cloud platform. They provide computing resources for developers to train and run open-source models. Why are they the ones deploying $1.8 billion overseas in India?
Because computing power is no longer a commodity. It is a strategic asset.
What do you mean by that?
If you operate an AI cloud platform, compute is your oxygen. If Together AI cannot offer its customers the absolute fastest, most efficient NVIDIA infrastructure, those developers will instantly migrate their workloads to Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud.
It's an existential arms race.
Completely existential.
If your competitor builds a dreadnought, you have to build a dreadnought, or you forfeit the ocean. Together, AI isn't spending $1.8 billion because they suddenly want to expand into real estate in India. They are spending it because the alternative is complete obsolescence.
And look at the global entanglement of this specific deal. It perfectly illustrates the macro business impact of the whole AI boom.
Walk me through the supply chain.
You have American venture capital raised by a U.S. startup Together AI, which is then immediately deployed as a $1.8 billion capital expenditure into an Indian infrastructure giant, L&T.
Okay, that's 2 continents.
Right, and they're building this specifically to house cutting-edge computing chips designed by an American company, NVIDIA, which are physically manufactured in fabrication plants in Taiwan.
The geographic footprint is wild. The money flows out of Silicon Valley and instantly becomes concrete in India and silicon in Taiwan.
It's a global web.
Which ties directly back to our first 2 sections on the IPOs. When Anthropic goes public's raised billions or OpenAI secures an $802 billion valuation, the primary business function of that capital is to finance this physical infrastructure growth.
Exactly. The capital markets are simply acting as the funding mechanism for the world's largest construction boom.
It is the industrialization of artificial intelligence. The math proofs of Astra require the compute requires the data centers, and the data centers require the trillion-dollar valuations just to fund them.
It's a massive flywheel.
But who is the real winner here? When I look at this deal, I can't help but think about the historical parallels to major infrastructure booms,
Like the gold rush.
or like building the interstate highway system in the 1950s. You know, the car manufacturers and the logistics companies got all the glory and the consumer brand recognition. But the companies that were pouring the asphalt, laying the rebar, and building the bridges were the ones who dictated where the cities actually grew.
They had the guaranteed risk-free revenue.
Yes. Or to use your gold rush example, the people who made the real money weren't the prospectors. It was the people selling picks and shovels.
It is a brilliant analogy. L&T and NVIDIA are the infrastructure layer. They don't have to win the highly volatile, unpredictable war over which AI model is ultimately the smartest.
They don't care at all if OpenAI's Astra beats Google's Gemini, or if Anthropic's Claude beats Grok.
Right. They are entirely agnostic to the software war.
I just want to build the arena.
Exactly. Regardless of who wins the intelligence race, every single competitor must buy the concrete, the cooling systems, and the GPUs. The infrastructure providers are the undeniable mathematical beneficiaries of this huge capital influx.
They are basically taxing the entire ecosystem.
Very effectively, yes.
So the macro level is clear. We have trillion-dollar IPOs funding multi-billion-dollar data centers to run self-optimizing math models. But let's shift to the final section of our deep dive today, because we really need to look at the micro level.
How it actually affects people.
Exactly. We need to understand how this massive global infrastructure investment trickles down to actual everyday business tools. Because the reality is, for you listening, you're going to build a $1.8 billion data center.
Probably not.
And you likely aren't going to be directly querying a foundational model to solve unsolved theoretical computer science problems on a Tuesday.
No, the vast majority of global businesses will never interact directly with the base layer of this technology.
Right. They need specialized functional applications that solve specific industry problems.
The application layer.
Yes, and our sources give us a perfect window into how this trickles down. We have a brief regarding a company based in Singapore called Gross.
Ross, yes.
They recently raised $17 million, and they immediately used that capital to acquire another company called Trustana, with the explicit goal of expanding their AI e-commerce agent platform.
This is a perfect example. This is the application layer. This is where the abstract concept of artificial intelligence becomes a tangible, revenue-generating business utility.
But to understand why Gross is making this move, we really must define what an AI agent actually is and how it fundamentally differs from the base models like Gemini or Astra that we just spent time discussing.
It's an important distinction to make.
I would love for us to clarify this because agent has become the buzzword of the year. Every software company claims to have an AI agent now, and I suspect most of them are just rebranded chatbots.
You'd be right about that.
So what is the technical distinction? What makes an agent an agent?
The key distinction lies in autonomy and agency. A base model, like the Gemini 3.7 Flash we mentioned earlier, is a highly capable generalist. It is a tool. You give it a prompt and it generates an output.
Like write me a poem.
Right. It can write a poem, translate code, or summarize a PDF, but it stops there. It waits for your next instruction.
It's completely passive.
Right.
It requires human initiation for every single step.
Precisely. An AI agent, however, is a specialist equipped with tools and autonomy. It doesn't just answer questions, it is given a high-level goal, and it actively takes steps across different software systems to achieve that goal.
Oh, wow. So it's making decisions.
Yes. In the context of Gross and Tristana operating in e-commerce, you wouldn't ask the agent to write a product description.
What would you ask it?
You would give the agent a massive directive like, optimize our entire inventory and pricing strategy for the upcoming holiday season across the Southeast Asian market to maximize profit margins.
That's a massive multivariable business directive. What does the agent actually do with that? How does it execute it?
It acts as an autonomous digital operations manager. Without further human input, the agent will query historical sales databases.
Right.
It will analyze real-time supply chain bottlenecks. It will independently adjust pricing dynamically across dozens of regional storefronts based on competitor data.
Just constantly tweaking the prices.
Yes, and it will monitor conversion rates and automatically reallocate digital ad spend to the highest performing channels. And if stock runs low, it will automatically interface with supplier APIs to reorder stock before it runs out.
It's actively executing workflow. It's not just talking, it's doing.
Exactly.
So if Astra and the massive L&T data centers represent the electrical grid and the power plants, Gras is building the highly specialized, smart industrial machinery that plugs into that grid to actually manufacture a result.
That is exactly the relationship. Gras can only exist, they can only build these highly sophisticated, autonomous e-commerce agents because companies like OpenAI and Google have spent billions of dollars driving down the cost of intelligence with those efficient Flash and Turbo models.
The cheap compute makes it possible.
Right. And they can only run those models because companies like Together AI spent billions building the physical data centers to host them.
So the massive macro infrastructure acts as a subsidy that enables the micro application.
It all cascades perfectly.
It really does. But let's look at the specific business strategy Gras is deploying here. Because raising $17 million in a news cycle dominated by $2 trillion valuations feels almost microscopic.
It's a rounding error for Anthropic.
Right. Yet what they did with that money is highly strategic. They didn't hire more engineers to build new features. They instantly executed a mergers and acquisitions play. They bought Trustana.
Very smart move.
Why? If the underlying AI models are so smart and getting cheaper to access, why wouldn't Gras just build Trustana's capabilities themselves?
Because in the current phase of the AI boom, time is the single most expensive and scarce commodity.
More than money.
Absolutely. The technology is moving so rapidly that building from scratch is a massive strategic risk.
I see. If Gras decides to build Trustana's e-commerce integrations internally, it might take them, 12 to 18 months of engineering time?
Easily. And in the world of AI, 18 months is a functional decade.
Right. The underlying base models will have evolved 3 times over by the time they launch.
Exactly. By executing an M&A strategy, Gras is fundamentally buying speed. But they are buying more than just time.
What else are they getting?
They are buying proprietary data and embedded customer relationships. Trustana already has existing integrations with regional e-commerce platforms, logistics providers, and merchants in Southeast Asia. Gras acquires that entire ecosystem overnight.
So it's aggressive regional consolidation. They're trying to lock down the specific vertical of Southeast Asian e-commerce before a massive global player tries to sweep in.
This is the ultimate business impact at the application layer. As the underlying AI models become commoditized, as intelligence becomes as cheap and accessible as electricity, the models themselves cease to be the primary competitive advantage.
Wait, that's a massive shift. So the intelligence isn't the moat anymore.
No, because everyone will have access to cheap intelligence. The real defensible business value shifts to the companies that own the workflow, the proprietary industry data, and the direct customer relationships in specific verticals.
That is a crucial insight for the listener. The winner isn't necessarily the company with the smartest math model. It's the company that flawlessly integrates that math model into the messy reality of a specific industry's daily operations.
Exactly. Execution beats raw intelligence at the application layer.
So is this regional vertical consolidation the real endpoint of the AI boom for the broader economy? We aren't all going to be running massive foundation models. We certainly aren't all going to be pouring 15,000 crore worth of concrete.
Thanks, Philip.
But we are all going to be relying on these specialized AI agents from companies like Gras and Trustana to run our logistics, our inventory, and our marketing.
Yes, that is the reality of the application layer. The massive IPOs fund the massive infrastructure. The infrastructure enables the cheap intelligence. And the cheap intelligence allows mid-market companies to deploy highly efficient, autonomous agents into specialized industries.
It's all connected.
For the everyday business owner, the impact won't be interacting with a trillion-parameter model. It will be interacting with an invisible, seamless AI agent that makes their specific business run 10 times more efficiently.
It is truly a fully connected global financial and physical ecosystem moving at warp speed. Let's draw a direct line through everything we've unpacked today, because it is staggering when you look at it sequentially from this single 24-hour window.
The through line maps the entire life cycle of the modern technological economy.
It starts at the absolute bleeding edge of theoretical math. OpenAI's internal Astra model achieves a paradigm shift, generating formally verified, undeniable mathematical proofs on GitHub.
It is essentially creating net new human knowledge.
And figuring out how to optimize computing itself, effectively solving the hallucination problem for enterprise use.
Which fundamentally alters the financial landscape.
Exactly. That technological leap creates the unprecedented financial stability and euphoria we see in the markets. It allows OpenAI to establish a rock-solid, incredibly defensive $852 billion baseline in an employee liquidity round.
Reassuring institutional investors that they are a mature financial entity immune to a down round narrative.
And simultaneously, it allows Anthropic to leverage massive hype for a compressed October IPO, targeting a $2 trillion valuation that acts as a gravitational black hole.
Forcing the reallocation of global capital away from legacy tech.
But that immense capital doesn't just remain in Wall Street clearinghouses.
No, it instantly hits the physical dirt.
Right. That IPO capital is immediately deployed into the real world, funding massive multi-billion-dollar infrastructure deals, like Larsen Toubro's 15,000 core contract to build NVIDIA-powered data centers for Together AI.
The money flows out of Silicon Valley to buy the land, lay the miles of fiber optic cable, and power the massive liquid cooling systems required to keep these models from melting down.
And finally, that physical infrastructure layer serves its ultimate purpose.
It drives down the cost of intelligence.
Yes, creating commoditized, hyper-efficient models like Gemini Flash and Seed Turbo. And that cheap intelligence trickles all the way down the ecosystem to fund specialized regional platforms like Gross in Singapore.
They use their $17 million in venture capital to execute rapid M&A strategies, buying Tristana.
To consolidate the market and deploy autonomous AI agents that actively manage our everyday e-commerce workflows. From an unsolved math equation on a whiteboard to an autonomous digital agent pricing shoes in Singapore, it is all completely connected by billions of dollars of capital and millions of tons of concrete.
It is a breathtaking logistical, financial, and computational machine.
It really is. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, slightly mind-bending concept to mull over on your own.
Oh, this is a good one.
We spent this time talking about how Astra is solving theoretical computer science problems, optimizing algorithms. And we've talked about how those optimized algorithms require incredibly complex billion-dollar physical data centers to run, built by massive human engineering firms.
Right, the concrete and steel.
So here is the question to take away. If an internal model like Astra is already solving previously unsolved mathematical problems with absolute, formally verified certainty, how long until the AI itself is tasked with designing the blueprints for the very physical infrastructure it needs to expand?
It is the ultimate logical conclusion of the optimization loop.
Think about it. How long until Astra looks at a 15,000 crore L&T data center schematic and says, no, the fluid dynamics of this liquid cooling architecture are flawed. Route the closed-loop water lines this way. It's 14% more thermodynamically efficient.
It's entirely possible.
Will the capital raised from these massive trillion-dollar IPOs soon be directed and managed not by human engineers and CFOs, but by the AI models themselves, autonomously optimizing their own physical expansion across the globe?
The machine optimizing the factory that builds the machine.
Exactly. It's something to deeply consider the next time you see a headline about an AI funding round or a new data center being built in your state.
Things are moving fast.
They really are. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It is so crucial to look past the fire and noise of the surface headlines and actually tear apart the blueprints.
Absolutely.
We hope you walk away with a much clearer understanding of the massive financial and physical machinery operating right beneath the tech world. Keep questioning, keep digging, and we will see you on the next deep dive. Goodbye.